What's up, YouTube? Thought I'd make a video on SABA's short-acting beta-2 agonists and their efficacy and usage as like a performance-enhancing drug (PED) in bodybuilding, especially for fat loss and in cutting cycles, and even outside of bodybuilding, really, because this drug's actually being found with a lot of like performance runners, performance athletes, jeez, endurance athletes. I'm going to get into that later. Anyways, before I begin, I just want to put out a little disclaimer, basically saying that I'm not a physician. This video is strictly for educational purposes. I'm not liable for any deaths caused by this. Please be responsible. Enjoy the video. Alright, so SABAs, commonly these drugs are, you'll find, like, the common SABAs are albuterol, clenbuterol, levobutamol, levobutamol. I'll take back clenbuterol. It's actually not prescribed anymore because of its extreme potency. I think it's only prescribed in Greece. Shout out Argyrios. I think it's only prescribed in Greece these days. Levobutamol is more expensive than albuterol simply because it's only the S enantiomer, the levo rotation, so it's slightly more expensive, slightly more pure, but it's more bioactive. Before I really get into like exactly how you can use this as like exactly how like you can practically apply this, I'm just gonna explain to you what beta-2 receptors are and like the whole mechanism of action of like how they work and like how the drug interacts with the cell, because that's what I'm primarily interested in, concerned in, not just like the actual procedures and protocols of how to use this. So getting into this, beta-2 adrenergic receptors play a role in, for the purposes of the video, they play a few other roles, but just for the purposes of this video, I'm only going to get into things that are pertinent. Vasodilation, bronchial dilation, and liver glucogenolysis, gluconolysis. And so with beta-2 agonists, they are 100 times, like more than 100 times more selective for epinephrine than norepinephrine, which is why there's like a big distinction between the alpha agonists and beta agonists. I mean, alpha receptors and beta receptors. By the way, leave me in the comments if you guys want me to go over that. Like the differences or just explaining these beta or alpha receptors. But when I was doing my research for this video, I already found like a bunch of videos on this topic already, so I feel like it'd be redundant for me to put this onto the internet anyways. But beta receptors have a much higher greater affinity for epinephrine than norepinephrine. And just to elaborate on this, epinephrine is basically from like the adrenals, versus norepinephrine is a neurotransmitter that's like found in the brain, that's like produced in the brain. So that's like the main difference, which is why like when you give someone an EpiPen, like it's not gonna like cause like a crazy like norepinephrine stimulation within their brain. It's going to be systematically within their body, primarily attacking the beta-1 and beta-2 receptors. And so, the bronchodilation is what's going to happen is like the epinephrine is going to bind to that beta-2 receptor on the lungs, on the smooth muscle of the lungs, and it's going to cause bronchodilation. Now, this is going to be very great, especially for endurance athletes, when you're going to want to immediately get in a state of flight or fight, and you want to maximize your VO2 max and maximize the air you can push down your lungs and get out. By doing this, by taking beta-2 agonists, you're going to extremely bronchodilate your lungs and you're going to maximize your VO2 max. Also, the vasodilation. This is prominently, like particularly found in the skeletal muscle, which is what we want. So when you're going to vasodilate your skeleton, the arterioles in the skeletal muscle, that's going to allow for more blood to get into there, thus increasing your performance, thus raising your VO2 max. So this does really have like great applications for endurance sports. It's actually I actually don't want to go into that topic yet. Never mind. And then with the liver, this is where it's used for like fat burning purposes, especially clenbuterol. Now I'm going to get into clenbuterol now. Clenbuterol is basically just like so much more potent and quicker acting, and so much more potent, quicker acting, and harder hitting than albuterol, which is why it really doesn't have many therapeutic purposes. In the anecdotal reports I found on Reddit is that like it led to the point where like people were like shaking, like they couldn't, they had tremors, things like that. They were, they were almost like tachycardic, and they were burning fat like crazy, which is a good thing in certain situations, but it really is not the most pleasant experience for someone, as it really jacks up their sympathetic flight or fight response. So that's not always the best thing. That's also going to lead to an increase in blood sugar, which is going to be great, especially in an endurance context or even in a weightlifting context. That's going to be great. Now, yeah, so that's going over like the effects it has. Now I want to go over to like actually like at a microscopic level what the drug does. So I created a little drawing for you guys. Yeah, it's kind of like a rough sketch drawing. This is actually kind of similar to the mechanism of action that I did with the PDE5 inhibitors. So if you guys are interested in that, go check it out. So this is what I have. This is, you can think of this as like this little U as a beta-2 receptor. And this dot is basically just like albuterol binding to it through an inhaler. And this is a G coupled protein. You're going to have your beta, sigma, and alpha receptors. And yeah, there's going to be guanine diphosphate. So what happens is when albuterol binds to this, it's going to induce a conformational change, allowing the alpha subunit to break off and go to adenylyl cyclase. Adenylyl cyclase is basically you use ATP to turn GDP into cyclic GMP. Cyclic GMP is then going to phosphorylate protein kinase G. Protein kinase G is actually going to go to like a little like unit here, and this is like a calcium ion channel, and it's just going to bind to it. Like just imagine like protein kinase G binding to this, and it's not going to allow calcium ions to enter. What this is going to do is, because as you guys know, or I hope you guys know, that because calcium ions are very essential for muscular contraction, as they bind to the actin-myosin-like chain, actin-myosin chains, and they form the myosin chain-like kinase, which basically allows the actin and myosin to grab onto each other and cause muscular contraction within the smooth muscle. The albuterol is going to stop this because it's going to allow or increase the rate at which this mechanism happens. And so you're not going to have calcium ions entering the channel, which is going to cause vasodilation, bronchodilation, and also gluconeolysis. Really got to pronounce that a bit better. Alright, getting back in the rest of this video. Now I'm just going to go into the practical application of things. The dosing of albuterol is what I found was like in common nebulizers and inhalers, you're going to find like one puff is going to be 100 micrograms. And so to get a therapeutic, like not a therapeutic effect is basically going to be like 1 puff to 2 puffs. But for like performance enhancing contexts, individuals typically go up to even 5 puffs. For clenbuterol, it is much more potent. I couldn't find anything on the literature because there's not too many studies out there, because it doesn't have that much of like it's not very efficacious in medical contexts. So you're gonna have to do experimentation on your own as far as clenbuterol goes, like how many puffs to take. But I'd probably caution you to start with 1 or 2, depending on just your experience with inhalers and how well you respond to them. But yeah, typically individuals go up to 5 puffs of 500 micrograms, which is going to give them that performance enhancing benefit. And I've covered everything I wanted to cover. What you can expect from this is just an increase of your flight or fight response. You're not really going to see that much of a benefit with like bodybuilding, like in the gym when you're like lifting especially heavy. This is something for like if you're like a track athlete, you're running the mile, you run the 800, you're doing like hill sprints, things like that. This is where it's really going to come in and be helpful for you, kind of like like I said, endurance athletes. That's why I was kind of like interested in this, just because like I found that like this could be used for like an ulterior purpose to like as like a PED. Yeah, that's about it. That's all I really want to cover. Really, I have no experience with this, so I wouldn't really be able to give my own anecdotal reports on this, unfortunately. But I would love to see if anyone in the comments or anyone who's watching this, if they've tried this before. And let me know what you guys think. Just leave me a comment if you guys like the video. If there's anything you guys want me to like go back over, I can just leave it down in the comments for you guys. And yeah, hope you guys have a good productive evening, and goodbye.